everyone, and welcome to our exciting demo of an engineer change request. We're here to talk about engineer change requests, and we're here to talk about the revolutionary new CAD modeling tool known as Onshape. And so we'll have future presentations on Onshape, and today we're going to really focus on how we connect Onshape, your CAD and modeling tool that you use for PDM and PLM. How do you connect that back to your ERP system? So here at CPS, we're a process and resource automation company. We're really focused on helping companies solve business problems such as the engineer change request. And what we've put together today for the engineer change request is a process that will help your engineers connect to the supply chain, connect to your ERP system. So historically, engineers have been working in their CAD-based system, and they weren't able to connect to that ERP system not easily, and there was a lot of paper floating around and different revisions and quantities that were wrong in the ERP system. So, we're trying to bridge that gap with a solution here at Clear Process Solutions. So, we've developed this engineer change request that integrates with Onshape. And I'm going to go ahead and walk you through our process. And so what I always like to do when I start out a presentation is really let everyone understand what the business problem is, what the actual process is, explain the process to you, then actually do the demo. So let's start with our engineer change request process, and we'll talk about that as we go through our workflow diagram here. So with our workflow diagram, we have on the left side here the name of the people that participate part of our engineer change request process. So we have the originator, the requester, we have our quality department, our engineer change order coordinator, our engineering team, an engineer, and then last, the support team. As we follow our engineer change request, anything that's aligned really with that horizontal swim lane are activities or tasks that we're asking a person to participate or do. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and follow through our engineer change request process. We're going to start out the process, and we're going to set the status to review QA, and then we're going to assign the QA department a task called review ECR QA. They have two options when they get an engineer change request. The quality department can either reject that, and we'll set the status to cancel request, and it'll go back to the requester, or they can approve it, and it'll go down our engineer change request loop here. Now we're going to follow the primary path as we will in the demo. We're not going to talk about the alternative paths here that you can reject it. But we'll keep on going down our primary path which goes into this engineer change request loop. Now with the engineer change request, we're going to set the status to review coordinator and assign engineer change request number. So the coordinator's responsibility is to coordinate all these changes and then make sure they have all the information that they need for the change request. If they don't have the information, then we're going to go simply reject it and send it back to the originator. But if we do have the information, the engineer change request coordinator will actually generate an ECR number for us. Once we generate an ECR number, then we're going to set the status to engineering team review, and we're going to assign it to an engineering team. So in our case, for our company, we'll just say that the engineering team meets every Monday to review the engineer change request, and then make determinations and decisions based on that engineer change request. So in this case, the engineering team is making a decision. Do they need to have further analysis on this engineer change request, and then they can conduct that analysis, or can they actually complete the request? During our demo, we're going to say that they don't need any further analysis for the request, that they can actually just go work the request. When they're working the request over here in this complete request task, the engineer really is doing a lot of things. They're updating drawings, they're updating CAD. We'll actually show logging into the Onshape system here and show some of the different documents and drawings that we have part of our Onshape system. And then also we're asking the engineer to update the ERP system at this step as well. So here at CPS we have SAP as our main ERP system, and with SAP we're going to be generating an engineer change number inside of SAP and then adding all the materials and revision levels from Onshape into our engineer change request inside of SAP. And we'll have the engineer push a button and actually update SAP, and we'll show some of that information as far as the change request number and the updates going into SAP. Lastly, once the engineer is done, we come back out to our main, and as long as it hasn't been rejected by anybody, we're going to go into our engineer change request notice loop. And in the engineer change request notice, it's just a very simple process that the coordinator is distributing the engineer change notice. The originator is actually completing or confirming that they've received that engineer change request notice. And then really we're exiting out. We're setting the status to approved, and we're ending our workflow here. Once we come out of our main loop, we really have a decision. Was the status of the engineer change request approved, or was it rejected? And those are our two paths here. So now that we know the workflow and the process, let's go ahead and get into the actual demo for this. We're going to go ahead and start up our form. We have a very simple form. Looking at the upper right, we have our engineer change request, and we have a status here of not submitted. We'll want to keep an eye on that status because that status is important. We'll see it update as we're going through our engineer change request process. We also log who the current user is, so we put their name and the requester name, and if they have an email. We have our request date, the date that this engineer change request is filled out, and we have an ECR number here. Now this is a number that we're generating within the system. This could be the ECR number that you use, or you could have a separate ERP related ECR number, and we call that out later on as we start to create ECR numbers. In this main request, we're really looking for the requester to fill out part numbers, drawing numbers, and revisions. So I'm going to go ahead as a requester. Instead of filling out all these, I actually have this really nice capability to upload an Excel file as long as it's in the same format to our form. So I'm going to go ahead and call part import. And this is just going to import 3 parts, parts 7, 8, 9 here, with our current revision levels E, G, and Z. After we have imported our parts, we can provide the problem. This is the problem, and we can propose a solution. This is a solution. We can attach any additional documentation that we need for this ECR, and then provide any overall comments and history. These are comments that actually show up as part of the history when we're submitting a form. So we'll say, please process quickly. Okay. Once we're done with that, we'll go ahead and hit save and route. And that's going to route our form for approval. And once we route it for approval, then we're going to start showing tasks on the task list. Now, there's many people that are part of your organization. I'm just going for demo purposes, assigning everything to myself, so they'll all be on my task list. But as we look at the task names, review ECR-QA, we can actually go look back at our workflow, and we can see within our main loop here that there's a task called review ECR-QA. So these tasks are going to correspond to our workflow that we designed out. So as the quality person, my sole job is just to make sure that we have that we're getting good requests, good part numbers, providing any other quality, looking at some of the problems and the solutions, looking over any documentation. But other than that, as a quality person, I can work back and forth with the originator to make sure that we get the right information, the right parts. But everything looks good. We'll say from the QA looks good. Now if we look at our comments over here, this is the originator showing please process quickly. So if we look at the WS dev, that's who started it. It was started on this date and time, and then we had a please process quickly as a comment. So as I put comments in for QA, those comments will show up in our history here. So from a QA perspective, we're going to go ahead and approve this request. Once we approve the request, the next task we're going to get on our list is the engineer change request coordinator, and that their sole job is to again review it for quality, but also their job is to create an engineer change request number. Now since we're using our ERP system, SAP, to generate our change request number, we want to put in an effective date for the ERP system. When will this change request take effect? We want to give it a ECR change description, so we'll say Onshape change, and we'll generate an ERP change number. Now if you have an ERP system that you can put in your ECR number, we could simply just go ahead and copy this number here into our engineer change request, or we could let the ERP generate an ECR number for us. So I'm going to go ahead and let the ERP generate the number. So I'm going to go ahead and click this button here. That's going to go off to SAP and actually generate an engineer change request number for us. Now we're going to use this engineer change request number to add multiple materials as we're processing this request. We can see that the request, the originator said, I want these 3 part changes. So we're going to go ahead and use this number that's inside of SAP to add those parts. And as we add those parts to SAP, then we'll see them showing up. So first thing we're going to do is just take a look at this ECR number that was generated in SAP. So I'll go ahead and copy that number, and I'll open up my SAP screen. Now I'm on our C03 screen, which is our display of our change request. So I'm going to go ahead and put in that number that we just put in, 056. We have our date here. This is the same date, and then we put Onshape change for our description. Now there's no objects currently because we haven't added any objects. We're going to be doing that here shortly. If we click on our object types, there are many different descriptions and objects that we can add to this change request, and we can certainly enable all of those. In this particular instance, we're just looking at materials and revision numbers, so we're just going to have active our material side now. So I'll go ahead and back out of that engineer change request. We'll see the objects being added later. From the coordinator's perspective, they're really done, so we can say number generated. Put in our number here, number ECR number generated, and then we can go ahead and approve this request. Now once we approve this request, it's actually going to go off to the engineering team, and like I said, every Monday they get in and they actually look through these requests. So we'll say it's Monday and the engineering team is meeting, and we're going to pull up each request and determine who's the engineer and whether we think there's some the different costing and implications to some of these engineer change requests. So we see that our ECR ERP number here is still filled out. We still have our original ECR unique form number here. We can't change any of that information as an engineering team, but now we have some new fields called engineering review that we need to fill out. So aesthetic review, our performance reviews, our cost impact, we'll say no change, and our change type will just say running change. And this is where we're going to say needs further analysis no, because we don't want to add any further analysis so that we can actually get into the Onshape portion of this. So from the engineering side, we can say everything looks good. And now it's time to assign an engineer and have that engineer complete the request. So now we have a task on our task list called complete request. Now, engineers, they're once they have been given the green light and to actually start working the request, there's a lot of things they have to do. So we can look at the engineering checklist here, and there's updating labels, updating packaging, updating instructions, product data, updating CAD, and updating our ERP. So if we're looking at updating CAD, well, let's just go look at Onshape and see what our CAD system looks like here. So if you haven't seen a demo of Onshape, I'd highly recommend getting a demo set up for you. But this is just our demo box for Clear Process Solutions for looking at some of the Onshape CAD models. So we have all these different models. I'm not going to click on any one of these. The one we're going to be dealing with is our boat pump here. So detailed version of the boat pump. And we have our own little private area that we've uploaded all of our SAP material numbers and our revision numbers so that we're going to pull this data from Onshape. So when we're in Onshape, we can actually go ahead and click on some of our information. And one of the things that we really want to do from a modeling perspective is go to our parts list. So with our parts list, we can have a list of all of our parts tied to our CAD model, and then what revision level. So once we're done looking at all of our parts, we can see all of our parts. There's 11 total parts on this boat pump, and they all line up on the left side here. We can go to any one of these parts and look at the properties to get the part information. So we can get the part number, we can get the revision level, and all of that information will be pushed back to our form. So I'm going to pop back over to our form, and I'm going to go ahead and click a button here that says Search Onshape. So this is going to go to Onshape and get all of our different drawings that we have that we're the owner of. So in this case, we see the owner is Clear Process Solutions. We can see who created it, Gary or Justin, and we can see the name here, which is the important part. The one we wanted to modify is this one that was for Justin for the boat pump. So when we select boat pump, we got this data from Onshape. We called off to Onshape and got our current document. As the engineer, now that we're done with that CAD document, we want to actually pull that information down to our engineer change request. So when we select boat pump, it's going to pull in all of our materials from Onshape. So now that we have all of our materials from Onshape, we can see our part numbers, our names, and our descriptions, and our revision level here. If I go look at my original request from the requester was looking at parts 7, 8, and 9. So what I want to do as the engineer, since I modified those parts, and we have a new revision level for them, I'm going to go select our 3 parts and hit Add Selection to our change request. Now we have our selection here, 7, 8, and 9, and if we updated our revision number inside of Onshape, it would pull that revision number. Or if we want to update it manually, so we've got E, G, and Z, we'll change this to F for our first part, H for our second part, and let's choose ZA for our third revision. So now we can update our revision number. If we wanted to click update here, we could do 2 things. We could put this in our ERP system, which will add to our engineer change request to SAP, and we could update Onshape at the same time based on what business process and business rules you have for setting up revision levels and where do you want to manage those. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and just update our ERP system. So we'll go ahead and click Update. We'll see that each line is actually getting called to run a C11, which will actually add these materials to our change request. And we'll be able to see inside of SAP each one of the materials with our change request number in it. So we have Our first material being update says revision level saved, our second one being update, and then we had an error on our third one. ZA is not defined, so that wasn't a valid one. So we could certainly go back and just update this one, but since these two got added, let's go ahead and go check out our SAP environment and see what our engineer change request looks like now. So when we open up our engineer change request inside of SAP, now we have this objects tab that's not grayed out anymore. So we'll go ahead and click on objects, and we can see our two materials that successfully got saved to our change request number here. And if I click on materials, what will line up is the revision levels that we just saved. So we have revision F and H, and we can see right here F and H are our rev levels for our change request. So now that the engineers updated all their CAD drawings, they've updated ERP all in one single form, they are officially complete and they have all their drawings. We're going to go ahead and approve this. And it's going to go back to our engineer change request or change order coordinator, and it's going to be the coordinator's job to actually distribute the engineer change notice, the ECN. So as the coordinator opens up the form, we're going to see the status up on the upper right, distribute ECN. We're going to see that the entire field's grayed out. Everything on the form has been completed. We have all of our revision levels updated in our ERP systems, and we have a complete history of what was done by the engineer. We have each checkbox next to each item that they said they did, as well as the statistics or the return messages from our ERP system. And then we have all the comments and who did what, when, throughout this whole process. So from the ECO coordinator's perspective, we can say distributed, and we'll go ahead and hit approve. The last step of our workflow is to actually have the originator confirm that they've received the receipt of the engineer change notice. So as the originator, we'll say, okay, yep, everything looks good, and I see that we've updated all this. Our ERP system looks good. It's on our right rev numbers in our ERP system. We can certainly go copy a material and go into our ERP system, and we'll go to, say, MM03. So we want to take a look at our SAP material number that we just updated here. We'll put our material in. We're just going to go to the basic data tab because that's where our revision levels are managed. And then we can see right here revision level F on the far right for the material we copied is now inside of SAP, and it's currently active at that material level. So as the originator, I can definitely confirm that the engineer did update our ERP system and our CAD system, and we're ready to go, and I can go ahead and approve this process. So hopefully you learned a couple things around our integration with Onshape, how we can pull information from a 3D modeling CAD system that's in the cloud. It doesn't have to be on-premise. We can integrate with the cloud. We can have a common form that connects and bridges your CAD and your PLM, PDM system. You can bridge that with a integration and a workflow and a tool like that CPS brings to the market. So I do want to thank you for your time today, and if you have any questions, please feel free to email info@clearprocesssolutions.com. Thank you.